What's up guys, IntelliTech Studios here, and today we're going to be doing the full review of Dyson's last upright vacuum without a ball. This is the Dyson DC33 multi-floor. Not to be confused with the Dyson DC33C, which is a canister vacuum sold exclusively in the UK and certain other markets. Here in the States, DC33 means an upright vacuum and solely an upright vacuum. Now, this was actually the most recent non-ball Dyson that Dyson sold. You could find these brand new in a refurbished state all the way through the end of 2018. After that, they pretty much all disappeared, and you can't find these at all anymore unless you're shopping secondhand or refurbished through some sort of third-party seller. So, if your main consideration for a vacuum is it has to be brand new or at least refurbished direct from the manufacturer, then this already isn't in your consideration because it's not available. But if you are shopping secondhand, or perhaps you see this used and you're wondering if it's worth it to pick it up for cheap, take it to your local vacuum shop and have it rebuilt, then hopefully this review you'll find very helpful, as this machine I have rebuilt myself with a brand new clutch mechanism, and I completely serviced the cyclone, washed all the filters, replaced the back hose, and cleaned everything out. And the second this video is over, someone will be taking over the custody of this machine, as they have purchased it for a handsome $150. So, anyways, that's enough as far as the backstory on this machine. Let's get into how it is to use. We're going to start off with the basic overview, so showing you how to use it, and then I'll start talking about my experience with using the machine as my daily driver for the last few months, and whether or not I recommend it, and what situations I would recommend it in, if any. So, starting off with the basic overview, I apologize for any background noise. I live on a busy street, so if you see if you hear large trucks driving by, that is the reason why. So starting from top to bottom, right up here at the top of the machine, we have our handle, which as you can see we can grip with our hands. We have the wand cap, which we can simply flip up and pull the wand out. It'll click into place. You press this red button to actually push the wand back down into place. The wand is polycarbonate, as opposed to a lot of other Dysons that are metal, but a lot of modern Dysons, in fact every modern Dyson here in the States, the wand is plastic, and I believe in the UK that just started being the case as well, so this is fairly typical for modern Dysons. But if you have an older Dyson like a DC07 or DC14, this wand isn't built as well as the aluminum wands, but it is more lightweight and it's cheaper to produce, which means if you ever break the wand, it is cheaper to replace. So there is a bit of a trade-off there. Now to release the wand and handle, we have a gray button right here, which we simply pull up. Now the hose is supposed to be attached via this little button. So once that's clicked in, the hose is clicked in, and then when we pull the wand out, that is our telescope breech. And we can press that button again and the hose will disconnect as you saw there, and you can attach both of the onboard attachments, the combination crevice tool dusting brush and the stair tool, onto the end of the hose or onto the end of the wand. There are some people that are under the impression that you can't attach the attachments directly to the hose, and that is false. You can attach the attachments directly to the hose. The only difference is that unlike the wand, the attachments on the hose don't click into place, they're just friction fit. But they do in fact fit, and every Dyson attachment with this style of connector works on the DC33. So if you have a lot of your newer attachments like the Dyson flat out tool, the tangle-free turbine, the carbon fiber soft dusting brush, the groom tool, a lot of those attachments will, in fact all those attachments with that connector, provided they're not powered for something like a V6, will work on the Dyson DC33. So while I've been testing this, I have been using all of my attachments, and the experience has been just as good as it would be on my Dyson UP13. So that's been really good. Now, as far as the hose, since we are talking about the hose right now, the hose stretches a good fair amount. I can get the hose up to 11 steps out of my 12-foot staircase. It almost makes it to the full staircase, and that's just with the hose. I never personally use the wand on stairs. I just put the stair tool directly on the hose, or the mattress tool, or the tangle-free turbine. So whenever I use those attachments, I can get all the way up to the 11th step, although it is a little tricky to get to the edges of the 11th step, and the 12th step is pretty much unreachable. So if you want to put your machine at the bottom of your stairs and you have a 12-step staircase, this does work, but you will need to clean the last couple stairs from the top of the stairs. So if you do that, make sure that you have the machine anchored against the side of the wall so you don't accidentally pull it with the suction of the hose and throw the machine and or yourself down the stairs, because while that would be very funny, it would not be very unpainful. So, speaking of which, we do have the upper cord hook, which is very swivelable, so you can swivel the cord hook out of the way to remove the cord in one fell swoop, and you can simply twist this back up to rewind the cord. The bottom cord hook is down here as well. Right below here, we have the U-bend assembly, which we can simply remove to check for clogs. We just simply press this gray button right here and pop this piece out, just like this. So if you want to check for clogs, we can do that. On this model, it is clear, but this is interchangeable with all the other U-bends from the DC07 and DC14, but it is clear. It looks kind of ugly after a while, but it is very handy, so you can tell if something gets stuck in there. And that clips back in just like so. You just simply lean the machine forward and push it back into place. Right here, we have this valve pipe, which we simply can remove and easily check for clogs. Here we have the changeover valve. So you want to make sure, if you have the machine reclined, this is a little tip, if you have the machine reclined, you want to make sure that this piece is not pushed in any particular direction, because if this little piece is pushed forward or pushed back too much, then this little bit will crunch down on it and it won't actually fit together properly. So if you push this, that's what that is. So if this falls down like this, then this is not going to move upright. So you want to make sure that this is pulled up until it snaps into place. And this usually happens automatically, but if this mechanism fails and you fail to and you're not able to put your machine upright, that could be why. Push this back up, and now your machine goes back up into the upright position just fine. And the machine actually locks into place with friction. There are no pedals or anything to break. You just simply place your foot on either side. There's a little foot diagram right here, and do it that way, and I'll demonstrate that in 1 second. So, if you want to recline the machine, like I mentioned, you can simply place your foot on the front of it and pull back. Now, for me personally, I prefer to put my foot in the center of the cleaner head, so that way I'm not putting uneven pressure on either side of the cleaner head, because this cleaner head is held in with a couple plastic C-clips on the underside, and, ooh, there's a sticker, and those can potentially break off or fall off if the machine is used very roughly. So that is something to keep in mind. This plastic is a little bit more brittle or a little bit thinner than it is on the earlier Dyson DC07 and DC14s. But the advantage of this plastic that is a nice design is that when it comes to Dyson plastic, the darker the plastic is, the more resistant the plastic is to turning brittle over time, because it's more sun and it's more, I forgot the word, but that the stuff that the light that the sun makes, UV resistant? I could be wrong about that. But the point that I'm trying to make there is, if you've had a problem where you stored your Dyson in a sunny area and the plastic turned like a yellowish greenish color and became very brittle over time, and perhaps that's why you're shopping for a replacement Dyson, this machine doesn't suffer from that problem nearly as badly. In fact, I would go out on a limb and say it's not even a problem with Dysons anymore, as long as they have this dark colored plastic, because this darker plastic does better at resisting that sort of sun reversion. And while this plastic is a little bit thinner, since this is a much cheaper model, as long as you're nice to the thing, you shouldn't have any problems with it breaking. And the nice feature of it is that this plastic is very flexible, so while you are doing things like using it, bouncing it off your furniture and whatnot, and even changing the clutch and all that, it does kind of bounce back into place, and it doesn't have too many issues with the plastic breaking. At least I haven't seen it on this model. And I did replace the clutch in my unit, which the clutch is this little piece right here, not the cover, but the actual mechanism inside that sits in here, and I was able to do that without any issues, although it is very difficult and you need a special set of tools to do it. So I don't recommend doing that on your own unless you have a lot of technical experience and a lot of hand strength. Although, to be fair, I don't have a lot of hand strength, and I did manage to get a hold of this, but that wasn't without whacking myself in the face a couple times and cursing quite a bit. So keep that in mind. But looking at this clutch mechanism, this is the switch that switches the machine from carpets to hard floors. It is not a switch right next to the power button like it is on newer Dysons. This is the power button, by the way. Simply push it to turn it on and off. So this mechanism right here, you can simply press it with your foot, but it's easier to do with your hands. It's in carpet mode right now, and whenever you recline the machine, it'll activate into proper carpet mode. You can see it swivels down, and then we can also flip it up into bare floor mode, just like that, and now it is in bare floor mode. Now, regardless of which position the clutch is in, the brush roller will not spin when the vacuum is upright, so you don't have to worry about the vacuum causing any issues with burning carpet or getting caught on anything while the machine is parked in the upright position. So if you put this upright to move a piece of furniture or to grab the hose, you won't have any problems with the brush roller spinning, assuming that the clutch mechanism is working properly. And then you can push this back into carpet and be on your way. The one nice feature about this design, as opposed to the mechanisms that are in newer Dysons, which is just a separate brush roll motor, is that this doesn't have the little spring in the power button where you actually change the carpet setting like on the newer Dysons. So this will actually remember what setting you're on because it's a physical switch. So that also does kind of play into the other part, that if you had this in bare floor mode and your brush roll isn't spinning, make sure to check and make sure that it is actually in carpet mode. This is carpet mode, this is bare floor mode. So keep that in mind, there is a difference there. So if you have it in bare floor mode, obviously the brush roll is not going to spin. Now going back up the machine, we have the pre-motor filter, which we can just simply press this blue latch and pop this out. This filter is generally recommended to be washed every 3 to 6 months. I've actually found that after using this for about a month, this filter still looks perfect. Now, my filter is a little bit discolored, so I probably should replace this. And if you've washed this maybe like a dozen times or so, I would recommend changing this, especially if the filter gets to be all puffy and weird looking. So I definitely recommend changing this, and I recommend changing this with a DC07 filter because the filter is interchangeable. The casing is the same, but this little inner filter is different. The little inner filter on the DC07 is a lot thicker and a lot better quality. This part is the same. You can separate these and wash these with warm water and any soap or detergent you prefer. Now this says to dry for 24 hours. In my experience, let this dry for at least 48. Unless maybe you put it in a sunny area, like you actually put it outside and let it dry, in which case you could probably put it outside at the beginning of the day and then grab it at the end of the day once nightfall hits and should be good to go. Now with any bagless machine, if this is your primary vacuum, I recommend buying a second filter so that way while one of them is drying, you can have the other one in your machine. That way you're not tempted to run it with a wet filter because that's something you definitely don't want to do. I will link these parts in the description. Now whenever you put this back in, you want to make sure that you line this up properly. There's a little tab underneath here, and you want to click it in. So you want to make sure this blue tab is under. You want to make sure this little bit is flush, because if this isn't in correctly, you can see like that, it's not in correctly. It's not going to seal properly. You want to make sure that's in all the way and that this is completely flush, because otherwise it is not going to have suction. Now to remove the bin, there's a little red button right here. You just simply press this and pull it out. You press the same red button again, but you push it down all the way, and it pushes this little tab out of the way, and it opens the trap door and empties the bin. Now you can disassemble the cyclone for cleaning, but it does require security Torx screws. Or wait, no. These are just normal Torx screws. So it does require a good amount of Torx screws, but this cyclone is relatively simple to disassemble for an advanced user. But if you're a novice, this might be something you want to have a vacuum professional do so you don't accidentally misassemble it in the wrong order. Because even I did that. I accidentally put it together and forgot some of the screws on the inside and had to take it apart and put it back together again. But once you do that, the thing is completely clean, and it'll get rid of any bad smells that may be lingering in the cyclone from perhaps pet owners after a decade of use. So, right here is the intake for the motor, right here is the outtake into the bin, and right here is the HEPA filter. Now you simply press this little latch right here and lift it up and move this out of the way. This is your HEPA filter. Now, I recommend changing this about every probably 2 years or so. Year maybe if you're really heavy on the machine, and every 2 years just generally speaking, because these don't wash out very well. I actually did wash this and it looks great, but it actually is kind of fighting the airflow a little bit because this filter is actually clogged, and that causes this little door to lift up. So I would definitely recommend changing this. I'll link this in the description as well. So these are theoretically washable. I wouldn't recommend it. I would recommend just simply replacing this when the time comes. But it is very nice that this is user accessible, because on the earlier DC07s, DC14s, DC15s, and all that, these filters were not user accessible. So that's definitely very nice that Dyson did finally change that, because filters are wear items and they need to be user accessible. Dyson did address that complaint. Now, one thing I do like about this machine is that unlike the newer Dysons, this doesn't have the weird mechanism where the handle lifts up and separates from the cyclone, because that makes actually emptying the bin with one hand very cumbersome on the newer machines, where on the newer machines you'll try to empty the bin, and instead of the button pushing, the handle will just flex out of the way. I've noticed that a lot with my Dyson UP13, UP14, pretty much all of my newer ball Dysons. Because this is all molded into one piece, it's not a problem, and it's very easy to empty this with one hand. So that is actually one thing that I really like about this machine. And this does lift up on the machine when you lift it, to make sure that you can't push the button and drop the machine while carrying it. Because this is also your carrying handle. This is how you're designed to carry it, is by this handle in this orientation. £15.4. So for a Dyson, this actually isn't all that heavy. 15 pounds is exactly in line with the weight of the Dyson Ball Multifloor 2 and the Dyson Slim Ball, both machines that, well, are much more expensive and are current generation machines, or at least they were. They've both been discontinued as of like last week, apparently, but which is sad. But when you're comparing those two machines, when you're comparing those machines and this, I should say, they both weigh about the same. So the carrying weight is virtually identical between the two. They're both 15 pounds, and they're both what you'd expect as far as carrying weight for a 15-pound machine. Now, some people have mentioned that the DC33 is technically lighter than machines like the DC14. And I've heard some people say, oh, isn't that an advantage because you value lightweight machines? And the truth is I do. But when it comes to the DC14 and the DC33, the DC14 isn't quite that much heavier. It's like maybe a pound heavier. I haven't actually measured it, but it doesn't feel really any heavier to me. And the 14 to me just feel better to use in general. So for me, the 14 and the 33 in terms of weight and maneuverability are virtually identical, and both are big upgrades over the Dyson DC07. So if you are coming from a Dyson DC07, and if you don't know what model it is, it literally says right on the top of here, or down here, or on this sticker, or on a sticker underneath it, that says what model it is. If you have a DC07, this is significantly lighter weight. So if you have a DC07 and you loved your DC07, but you just didn't quite like how heavy it was, then this is a great option for you. So that is that. Now, one thing that I do like about Dysons, both ball models and non-ball models, is that even though 15 pounds seems like it's lightweight-ish, but it's not as light as some other machines, these machines are actually very maneuverable and very lightweight in the hand. When you're actually pushing and pulling the machine, it feels a lot lighter than it is. And that's the more important factor, because you're going to be carrying the thing much less than actually vacuuming with it, especially even if you have a multi-story house. If you happen to have multiple vacuums that you just keep on each floor, then carrying it up the stairs isn't really that big of a deal. Although the experience of carrying it up the stairs is very nice, and in my opinion, it's a little bit less awkward to carry than the ball Dysons, especially the ones that are heavier. So you do have some advantages there. So whenever you're actually pushing and pulling it, it basically puts no strain on my arm whatsoever, other than the simple motion of pushing and pulling, which is going to put some force on you, more so pushing, but it's fine. And this does have an automatic height adjustment, so you don't have to worry about it being adjusted incorrectly, although you do have to worry about the mechanism working properly, and we'll discuss that in a sec. But one thing I also noticed is that because this technically kind of rides on two wheels, it's very easy to kind of turn around a corner and spin it, which a lot of other vacuums don't have. So even though there's no ball technology, I can't just twist around a corner, I actually still kind of can. And it's still relatively simple. It obviously takes a lot wider of a range of motion to accomplish it, but it is accomplishable. It's a tongue twister. So one thing you want to keep in mind when you are using one of these DC33s is the way that this height adjustment mechanism works and the way that the cleaner head pivots onto the floor. So the way that this works is, it's kind of hard to see on this model, but there's this little gray piece right here, which this is your actual brush roll housing, then this is the main cleaner head assembly. So again, it's easier to see on the 14 and the 07 because these are different colors, but here you can see this little joint, and you can see how this swivels. Like, see how this moves up and down? So this essentially floats on your carpet, and you can see how much hair this has tangled up after just a week or so. This machine is very bad at tangling hair, but since this brush roller is flat, it is easy enough to wipe a blade or a pair of scissors along this, especially after removing the base plate, and clean that up. I did do a video showing how to clean up one of these brush rollers. I'll link that in the description. So the way that this works is this actually floats on the carpet, and the weird thing is that there's no springs to hold this down, because a lot of times what will happen, and I've seen this happen with these machines, is the cleaner head will essentially get stuck like this, where the cleaner head won't actually be adjusted properly. So then whenever you're on the carpet, this little back part of it, you see that little gray piece sticking out, will be sticking up in the air, and as a result the brush roll won't actually be making contact. So then you'll have to actually step on the front of it to manually push this piece down, or I'll just stick my toe underneath here and push this down manually. So if your machine is doing that, and it's kind of hard to check it, but if your machine's performing poorly, that's something you want to check on. And if your machine is doing that, it's actually because of the hose in here, because for whatever reason, now, and I think I know why Dyson did it, because on the DC28 in particular, the springs that they put in here made a lot of noise. But what they did with this is, this hose right here is actually supposed to be stiff. And this hose being stiff and being straight is the pressure that pushes this up. And that, as a result, makes it stay in contact with the floor when the cleaner head is down in the operating position. So if this hose has gone flimsy, and then this will get stuck basically like this, instead of pushing itself up like this, which is what it's supposed to do, because this hose is not supposed to bend like this. It's supposed to stay like this, so that way it always pushes this up as far as it can go. So if you're having issues with this not adjusting correctly and not staying attached to the floor, then you're going to want to replace this lower hose, and that is easy enough to do. Sometimes, if this hose has been the same orientation all its life, you can kind of twist it around and then use the stiff side, and sometimes that works. But a lot of times, in my experience, that's really only a temporary solution that'll last you maybe a year before you have to actually change the hose. But the good news is these hoses are really cheap, and I will link these in the description as well if I remember to. So, with that said, I think that is pretty much all there is to say about the DC33 as far as all the objective stuff. Now we'll talk about my experience with using it after all of that time. Now, I did somewhat enjoy using this machine, but I found this machine to be a little bit loud, and overall I found the clutch mechanism to be a little bit more of a hassle than I'd like. Even after installing it correctly, sometimes this knob doesn't like to stay in the bare floor mode. I noticed there's this weird thing, and I did check, I did install it correctly. Sometimes it'll stay right there, and I have to push it, and it clicks into the bare floor mode. So that's a weird little glitch with it. Now, as you can see from this little warning right here, if the brush roller stops, and if this mechanism starts making a very loud buzzing sound, and trust me, it's very loud. Once you hear it, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. I don't want to demonstrate it right now because my cat and my dog are sleeping and they're very cute, and I'm very tempted to not even turn this machine on right now. But this machine does sometimes do that. Now, it's only done it once in the entire time that I've used it, and that was whenever I first started using it. So once the clutch kind of settled in a little bit after I installed it, again, brand new part, brand new genuine Dyson part, it stopped doing it. So that is one thing where if your machine makes a loud buzzing noise, then it's this little mechanism right here. And sometimes it will make that because it just doesn't like certain carpets. If the brush roll faces too much resistance, then it may make that noise. And if it doesn't make that noise even with the resistance, and you notice your brush isn't turning properly, then the belts on the clutch are worn out and you have to change the clutch mechanism. Now, you theoretically could have someone rebuild the clutch with new belts, but it's a whole process. And again, if you don't really know what I'm talking about, then it's best to just take it to your local vacuum shop and have them do it, unless you are mechanically inclined and you're interested in getting down to the nitty gritty. So that is something you can do to fix up your own Dyson if you want, rebuild it with new belts, but it's much easier to just buy the new clutch mechanism for $50 and drop it in. But even that is a little bit complicated. Taking the old clutch out isn't complicated. It's putting it back in and getting the belts stretched over the motor spindle and especially over the brush roll. That's hard because these belts have a lot of tension. But at least it does mean that they do keep good tension on the carpet. So, while we're talking about that, let's talk about performance. How is the performance of this on carpet? I mean, on bare floors, it's pretty self-explanatory. The brush roll shuts off, straight suction. It works as you'd expect. It picks up stuff off bare floors, it picks up fine debris, picks up cat litter, picks up all that stuff. So I haven't had any real problems with it on bare floor. And even if you did, Dyson does have a good amount of floor tools that you can use if that's something that tickles your fancy. But what I've noticed is that on carpets, it doesn't quite clean as well as my UP13. In fact, the UP13, which is the Dyson Ball Total Clean that I unboxed a little while ago, all of those newer ball Dysons, just all of the ball Dysons that came out after this machine, including the 65, the Multifloor 2, Animal 2, Kinetic, all that, Total Clean, complete, whatever, they all clean much better than this. On every type of carpeting, they have better suction, they adjust to floors easier, and they have a much better brush roll setup that doesn't involve this clutch. And they're more maneuverable, and they get into tighter spaces. They're just better in every single way. With the exception that they're much more difficult to work on, and they have a lot more mechanical bits that can potentially fail. Other than that, their performance is night and day. But if you were happy with the performance of your previous Dyson and you've tried other machines and your Dyson still performs well, or if you simply have low enough pile carpet to where the difference doesn't really matter, then this is a perfectly acceptable alternative if you don't like the swivel steering. But if your concern is I want the best performing Dyson, because there have some people that have erroneously stated that the newer Dysons don't clean as well as the older Dysons, and that's just completely false. There's no way of getting around it. That's crap. It's completely untrue. It's not even close. Now, the one older Dyson where it is close to performance is the DC73. Every other legacy Dyson cleans much worse than the newer Dysons. If you upgrade to a newer Dyson, you are getting better performance, provided you're not trying to go cordless. Because if you're trying to go cordless, that's a whole different animal. But if you're staying with Dyson's corded uprights, you do have worse performance on this than a newer Dyson, even in ideal conditions. So I want to specify that, because if you're thinking about picking up one of these and fixing it up thinking you're going to get something just as good as a new Dyson, you're just not. It's not going to perform as well. So and we are at the point where Dyson Ball Multifloor 2s and Animal 2s and Kinetics are old enough that you can find them secondhand for really cheap and rebuild them pretty easily. And by rebuild them, I mean new filters, new cleaner head, and a couple attachments here and there, and you're on your way. So, with that said, is this a machine that I would recommend? And you know what? It depends. But I am going to give some sort of an answer. For the vast majority of people, I would say no. There is no real world reason as to why you would pick this over a newer Dyson like the Ball Total Clean, the Multifloor 2, the Animal 2, or anything like that. Those machines are quieter, they perform better, they have better suction, they have in some ways better tools, in some ways worse tools. They have identical filtration, and they're overall just a lot more performant. I'm not going to say reliable, because I don't necessarily believe that they're more reliable, but personally, I don't think the difference is worth the performance deficit. So, and if you are concerned about reliability, and if you want something that's very reliable yet still has the performance of a Dyson, you might want to shop with a different brand, something like Cibo. But this Dyson, my experience of using it the last little bit has been fine. It has gotten up a good amount of dirt out of my carpets, although after running my newer Dyson over it, it does pick up a lot more stuff. So that's pretty much all there is to it. So with that in mind, I was going to run this machine, but you can see my children are sleeping very peacefully. That's what I get for not finishing laundry. So I don't really want to disturb them. But if you do want to see this machine running, I did do a video recently on vacuuming my living room with this machine, but this sounds like a fairly typical Dyson. So it's not too loud, and I will actually, if I can remember correctly, I will actually run this later on, and when I upload this, I'll post the decibel levels in the description. But I will say, it sounds like a Dyson. It's not too loud, but the thing that generally makes Dysons sound louder than they are is the motors are very whiny. And this one in particular is very, very whiny for some reason. I don't know why. It's way whinier than a lot of other Dyson motors. This motor could be under some wear and tear after being around for a decade, so that could just be a fault with this machine. My other DC33 sounds a lot better. So this machine, I wouldn't consider it quiet. I wouldn't consider it loud. I consider it about average. It's not as whiny as a lot of the Walmart vacs you get now from Bissell and Dirt Devil and Hoover. A lot of those motors are just low powered and very, very whiny to the point where in certain rooms I can't even listen to them and use them. Whereas this I at least can kind of, well, the one that sounds good I can use in any room, and and the noise doesn't bother me. This one, the noise bothers me a little bit, but I think that's just because of age. So anyways, I think I've covered pretty much anything that there is to cover on this machine. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I guess I will show the attachments real quick, just to show you how exactly the attachments attach, in case you're wondering about that. So, looking at the wand here, there's a little tab right here, and there's this combination dusting brush and crevice tool, which I guess I didn't comment on these. So this tool works very well. I find that the brush doesn't actually get in the way, and the crevice tool works exactly as it should. The brush has nice soft bristles. I do wish the brush was a little bit bigger, but the good news is the newer combination dusting brush and crevice tools that address that problem with the newer Dyson balls have the exact same connector. So you actually could upgrade the attachment and put one of those newer attachments on here, no problems. So that is something you can do if you want. So, and then if you want to attach the attachments directly to the hose, you just press this button, pull the hose out, and then now if you want to attach an attachment directly to the hose, you just push it on just like that. So the stair tool works very well on stairs and on upholstery. It doesn't work as well as the tangle-free turbine tool or the mattress tool, which those tools I prefer, so I generally use those anyways. But this does get the job done. It does work, and I haven't had any issues with it. So it gets the job done for sure. And that just clicks in just like that. So that is that. And then hose pops in like that. Clicks into place. Press this red button back here to begin sliding the wand down and snap down the wand cap. Now, since this does have an automatic changeover valve, whenever you put the machine in an upright position while it's on, suction will start coming through here. So it is going to suck down to this, so keep that in mind. But it does mean that there is nothing to change, it just automatically switches over, which is a feature I do really enjoy on Dysons. Oh yeah, and the cord. I do love the cord on this because it's a Dyson. It has a very long cord. It's a nice 30-foot cord. I believe it was 30 feet. It might be like 28, but I'm pretty sure it's 30. But I haven't had any complaints about the cord. I never had to unplug it, plug it back in. So cord length, very, very good on this. So if that's one of your concerns, well, don't let it be a concern. The cord on this is great. It's perfectly long and it gets the job done. Now there are two different plugs on this. This is the older style plug. Let's zoom in on that. You can see, yes, I have it plugged into a janky power strip, don't judge me. You can see that's the one with the molded plug. There is newer versions of this machine that have the newer style Dyson plug, but I'm sure most people don't care about that. And as far as the colors, this ugly yellow color is one of the most common. If you find a newer one, it's going to be blue. And the blue is objectively the best color, especially because with the red accents and the blue accents, it matches a lot better. But, oh, I'm in wide angle mode, aren't I? Ooh, cool. Note 10 Plus, new camera. How do you like it? So I do find, I'll just leave it in wide angle so you guys can see how this is. So I do find that this yellow color is disgusting and gross, but it's just what you're going to find. Most people don't care about the color. It bothers me because I'm weird. But you can find this in blue very commonly along with the yellow, and sometimes you can find a red and a white one as well. I believe that's all the colors of this. But who knows, maybe there's another one out there. Of course, if it really bothered you, you could just swap this top piece or the whole Cyclone, but most people aren't going to do that. So yeah, and again, just to reiterate, power button is up here in case you want to turn the machine on, which is probably very important if you want to vacuum. So, anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out with my full review of I almost said Dirt Devil, of the Dyson DC33. It's kind of funny because I was just watching Joe List's new comedy special, because I've been really into comedy recently. And dude doesn't talk about vacuums his entire set, but there's like one point when he mentions in his new special, I think it's called New Material or New Year Material, something like that. It just came out. And there was like one self-deprecating comment where he mentioned like screwing something up in life. And he's like, oh, this is what I get for buying a Dirt Devil. I should have bought a Dyson. And you know what? I do agree, because every Dirt Devil that I've reviewed as of late has been pretty bad, which makes me really sad because old Dirt Devils used to... Yes, I know they always were the junk brand, but they used to be kind of good. Anyways, I'm rambling now. This was my full review on the Dyson DC33 Multi-Floor. So you'll be seeing this review today, and this Dyson will go to its lovely new home in Minnesota. So anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next video. Have a good one. Peace. And again, if I remember correctly, if I don't, feel free to if I forget to put this in the description, feel free to remind me, but I am going to put links to the filters, to maybe the brush roller, at least the filters in the description. And if I can find a listing of these for sale, I'll put it in the description, but I don't think I'm going to find anything other than one-off listings, so yeah, your mileage may vary. But anyways, this is Intelitech Studios signing out. As per usual, I always end up repeating my outros. I'll see you guys in the next video, and I hope you all have a good one. Peace. And be sure to let me know what machines you want to see me review next. So right now, my review radar includes the NZ stick vac I just unboxed, the Tempo, finally with that, and the Total Clean, since I got both of those back in January, and I've been using both of those. And whatever else you guys want to see reviewed. So drop it in the comments below, and I'm looking forward to any feedback you guys want to see, and I'll see you in the next one.